Okay, thank you, everyone. The name is Christopher, recovered alcoholic, one day at a time. Um, my sobriety date is the 21st of, I'm sorry, the 23rd of November, 2021. Actually, this past Friday was 1,200 days. Um, I, yeah, I whenever I am asked to share, and I'm grateful for the opportunities to do it because it's important work. And as my first sponsor, who had passed away, would often end meetings with, he would say, "Thank you for our sobriety," and that's the point: as we stay sober as a community, um, giving back, serving, sharing our experience, strength, and hope. Um, the blessings of the newcomers and the incredible stories of the old timers and those of us in between, right? It's all of that that helps. And so with that in mind, when I share my experience, strength, and hope, what I like to share is this. It is my experience. There will be elements that I'm sure will be similar. There will be elements that will seem different, and that's okay. You take what you need and you leave the rest, right? But there are two things that are common regardless of what we look like, where we came from, what our experiences are, and that is um, we all understand that we are alcoholics, and at some point we will die. And whatever we do between those two, that is where this program allows us, in my opinion, to live and to be sober. I've had times in my life where I have gone without alcohol, but before I truly obtained sobriety, what I understand through AA meetings, through the readings, through my other study, is that I really reflected an alcoholic mindset as far back as I can remember, till at least age 9 or 10. The constant fear, the anxiety, the need to escape reality, like all of these things, they were present even before I fell into actually drinking alcohol. Um, and they were the result of a lot of different things. So the way that I will break the share out is I'm not going to talk that much about the time where I was actively drinking. I think it's the transition and the period up to now where I can provide the most. And so, what I would say is this. um, I thought for many years I was hiding my drinking, and I wasn't. Um, I drank only at night, and I tried to be careful, right? And as many of us did, we thought we were fooling people, but we were really only fooling ourselves. Um, and it wasn't until many years later that I realized that I couldn't stop. And I tried to go through outpatient. Um, I went to different counselors, and I figured that I could outthink this. I figured that I could find a way to where I no longer needed to drink. And that point didn't come. And it got to a point to where my wife, and we got married young at 20 years old, then in high school. Um, in my mid 30s, she said, you're going to need to start going to AA meetings and doing stuff. So I tried, and truth be told, I hated the meetings. Um, my first thoughts were the people in these rooms are nothing like me. I can't stand all the smoking. Um, why are all of why are all of and everybody and nobody, right? The kinds of statements you should never be making. And it wasn't until we got to a place where she said, you need to do inpatient. And I was willing to try, so I did. And it was life changing for me in many ways. Um, it was actually over Easter, and in my past, I was a certified lay minister in the AME church, and I had the very unusual experience of actually writing and giving a sermon on Easter in a rehab facility, for those of us who wanted to. And when I look back at what I wrote, it really was, I think, prophetic, because it was about this idea of an old life being buried and a new life being brought. And it was there that I became aware through many of the different techniques that they did, the different types of techniques, that I was somebody who had survived a great deal of sexual, physical abuse as a kid. I had had dreams and nightmares for years, but didn't realize they were true. And two things happened when I left that facility. I was determined to never drink again, and I was determined to never talk to God again. And the reason was I could not fathom a higher power, and my higher power I call God, Christian belief in Jesus and the Trinity. But at that point, and again, this was coming from somebody who was a minister, went to Christian schools, went to church 3 times a week as a kid, was forced to really, um, to a place where I was like, I can't believe that there's actually a higher power that would allow everything that happened to me. Um, and I managed to stay as a dry drunk for a number of years until COVID hit. And once COVID hit, and I had, some issues, there were issues in my marriage, and the kids were home, all 3 of them, and my mother-in-law lived with us, and it wasn't that big of a house, and I found myself looking to escape again. And after the COVID period, I was taken by my wife out into the woods, and what she said to me was, "You're gonna go to AA. You're gonna take this seriously, or the marriage ends." And I decided to walk home from there instead of getting back into the car with her because, I mean, can you imagine the awkwardness and the anxiety after that conversation? And it was snowing, and she had a way of yelling and doing other things, and it was like, no. So I walked, and it was about a 4 to 5 mile walk home. And about the time I got back to the house, I actually couldn't walk anymore because I was crying so hard, and um, knelt on the ground, a little bit muddy, but on some rocks, and I said, I can't do it anymore. I said, I've been trying to fight this thing for over a decade now. I clearly can't do this. So you're my only hope. And I saw something that was like a vision that kind of showed me 2 paths. And what I heard is you can keep walking the path you're on, and you're going to keep carrying all the baggage. And you're a smart guy, and you'll try to figure it out, and you'll keep failing. Or you can submit your will. I'll take all of your bags, but you have to follow me. When you stop following me, and you decide to go back on the other path, I'll give you your bags back. You're welcome to do it. And that was the 26th of November. So I hadn't drank for a few days, and the reason was I was scared that maybe I was going to be caught. Yeah. But something definitely changed in me at that point. I did some version of steps 1, 2, and 3 on that walk back. And I went to a meeting the next day, and there were 2 old-timers there. One guy had 35 years, one guy had 40. And I said to them, I said, I need AA. I got to stop drinking because I got to save my marriage. And they gave me what turned out to be some of the best advice I've ever had in my life. And what they said to me was, this program can't save your marriage, but if you work the steps, it's going to save your life. And they were right on both accounts. For the next few years, I really thought that our marriage was getting better. I was certainly much healthier than I had ever been in my life. I didn't have anxiety. I didn't have peace. I have not had the desire, not for 1 second, to drink since that time that I hit the ground. I started doing a lot of service in AA meetings and otherwise. I found an amazing home group. Started volunteering, which is something I used to do years ago, working with kids and single moms, volunteering in churches. I became a chaplain for a local group. Kids were really responding, and then over a couple of those years, she had said, and I'm going to go through this part really quickly. She had said, I think we need to separate. We need time to heal. The 4 times that I tried to, 2 of those times I couldn't find a place. And the other 2 times she ended up with a sickness that sent her to the hospital. And one of those was an incident that almost took her life. And so I had a chance to care for and show grace and all of those sorts of things. But then in November of 23, almost 2 years to the day after my sobriety date, she said, we need to get a divorce. And no marriage counseling, no nothing. We need to get a divorce. And we're going to go out and we're going to tell the kids right now. And so went through that, which was a very hard conversation to have. And the kids knew, because after I got back from that walk, I sat down and I talked with them, and they hugged me and they loved me and they said, we love you, Dad. You're going to get through this. And a similar sort of conversation after the divorce, she said that. So about 2.5 months after that, I moved out. The background you see behind me is the place I've lived for about 13 months. During that period of time, my sponsor died. And the way we found out about it is I asked police officers in Maryland to do a wellness check, and they found him, and he had been dead for some time. And I didn't have a desire to drink. And the day that I moved in here, and I looked around at the quiet, I didn't have a desire to drink. And my oldest, who will be going off to college next year, stopped talking to me. I don't know exactly when or why that happened. They had been my buddy for the most of their life. I'm the one who took them into New York City every Saturday for 2 years to a fencing camp at 7 in the morning on Saturdays. I was the one that took them to their first Pride parades. So I'm not sure again what had happened with them, but they are not speaking with me. They're getting ready to go off to college. I work in colleges, I consult, I do all kinds of stuff, and I've been kept out of the process. And that's really been painful. But no desire to drink. And then last July, I got a call at 7 in the morning that my mother died. Now, one of the most beautiful things that this program gave me in working through it was an opportunity to heal, and to heal to a place to where I reconciled as best I could. She never fully admitted, she admitted part, but never fully admitted the things that she did. And I prayed for her, and I could never go back into a relationship with her where we just pretended like nothing happened. And that was part of me looking out for me, which was something I've learned in this program, was that, and this was the hardest part of step 4 for me, and step 8 was looking at how hard I had been on myself forever, and then giving myself forgiveness and grace. Those were I was the hardest person to forgive, is what I learned through my process. And I was able to say that that's not a relationship that is one that I can be in, but I can forgive, and I cannot have bitterness, and I cannot have anger. And I was able to write the eulogy and the obituary, and I was able to be one of the pallbearers that put her into the ground. This was a person who had done a lot because of triggers. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it was many years of a lot of stuff. And And it took a while for me to heal. But because of the program and working through it and everything like that, without bitterness or anger, I was able to help usher her into the next life. And I never had a desire to drink. And while I was down there, I dealt with my now soon to be former spouse, deciding that she was going to bring the kids down. And as I told her, it's not a good space. There were many sexual abusers in the family, and they all live in that town. And it's one of the reasons I always kept the kids away, right? But she insisted, and it got, for the first time, heated on my side. And she didn't come down, and it was great. And I had my cousin with me. And I remember in the car, he's like, man, go ahead, like curse, like let it all out. And I'm cursing all out. And I looked at him and I said, I have never in my entire life been more happy for AA because right now, if it weren't for this, I can't tell you how much of this North Carolina alcohol I would be ingesting. But I had not even an inkling for it. All I had was a gratefulness that I had no desire for it. And so in the SOTU group, Spirit of the Universe, which is my home group, on Sunday nights we have grapevine meetings, and I'm a co-sponsor, I'm a, I help to lead that meeting. And there was a story some months ago shared, and it was how to make sure that you're always part of the no matter what club. And that's no matter what life throws at you, you will not pick up. And so I was definitely a card carrying member of the no matter what club then. And it's continued to be difficult. And I have been called things that I'm not. I have been told that I'm a person that I'm not. I have dealt with a lot of those sorts of incidents. But around the time that all of this really negative stuff was happening, I have been brought back to a relationship with my father that I have never had in my life, my Holy Father that I've never had, a closeness that I've never had. When I was working through step 12, I had an opportunity to practice step 12. And also the motto that whenever anybody anywhere needs help, I want the hand of AA to be there. There was a guy who was stumbling on the side of the road, and I thought he was having a heart attack. And so I pulled off, and another guy pulled off, both of us black guys. You can't tell from the screen, but I'm just under 6 feet tall, and I'm about 275 pounds. So I'm pretty strong, pretty big dude. And the other guy was about 6'2", 6'3", also a big dude. And we went over, and we were ready to call an ambulance or something, but then we both noticed the smell of alcohol. And I looked at the guy, and I'm like, well, I'm not putting him in my car. He said, well, I can't put him in mine. So we asked him, and he showed us that he lived just a short ways away. So we each got under one of his shoulders, and we were going to walk him back to his house because this guy was stumbling, and the road was only a few feet away from the highway, from the sidewalk, and people drive 60, 70 miles. It's New Jersey, and New Jerseyans drive a certain way. And so we had to make sure that he didn't fall into the road. 10, 15, 20 steps in, he started calling me the N-word, the other guy the N-word, every single slur, and some that I had never heard of before. And we looked at each other, and we were both ready to put him down. Like, why? But I was like, you know what? He just lives over there. Let's just get him to his place. And we did, and we got him on the steps, and hopefully he made it into his building. Walked away, looked at each other, and he's like, man, I didn't think when I woke up this morning that this was going to be what I was dealing with. I was like, yeah, me neither. I said, but you know what? We just did God's work. Because this guy would have liked anybody but us to be helping him. And who knows, maybe he's going to wake up from this hangover, and maybe these prejudices that he holds deep down, maybe he'll have a reason to question them. Who knows? I said, I live now not trying to understand everything, but just trying to listen. And he was like, yeah, me too. And I got back in my car and I called the sponsor and he was like, congratulations. Like, you just got, he's like, I can officially say you have worked the 12 steps now. He's like, if I haven't heard evidence of step 12 before now. And what I've come to realize is that I truly believe that most hurt and harm, including the hurt and harm I caused, didn't come from a bad place. It came from hurt. Hurt people, right? Um, and when that can be addressed and dealt with, we get healthy. My sponsor used to tell me all the time, remember, because my soon-to-be ex-spouse would say things to me. And he's like, here's what you have to remember. You're not a bad person trying to become good. You're a sick person focused on getting healthy. And this program and all that's come from it is something I'll take for the rest of my life. And I'm beyond grateful. And so yesterday, when between meetings, I was working remote yesterday. Between meetings, I looked at my phone because there was somebody at the front who was trying to get in the building and they had a badge on. And I go downstairs and I just got served my divorce papers yesterday. And so I called a few of my friends in AA, my sponsor, some others, just to process and talk through them. And it's like, I know it's a blessing because this is something that needs to end. The way it was done and everything else was hard, but I didn't have a single desire to drink over any of it. And that gave me something else to add to my share today regarding the strength that can be built in this program, and its strength in community, its strength through our higher power. I am grateful for alcoholism from this perspective. When I got the gift of desperation, I got the gift of a relationship that I never had before. And it is the key to how I live each and every day now. You probably see on my shirt, on the front it says, you are enough. On the back it says, dear person behind me. I have 3 different colors of this shirt. And I also have another one that says, not all wounds are visible. And I wear these when I go out to do shopping and other things because there have been many people who have come up to me and said that they needed to see that kind word. I'm sure there are many, many, many more who saw the shirt and didn't say anything, but it's what they needed to hear. I've come to understand service as part of who I am, not what I do. And in working through the steps, I've learned who I am. I've come to really understand who I am as a person, and I've come to love who I am as a person. And I've come to love others and to get to a place where I can offer grace. And there's a saying that I heard recently that says, the devil knows our name but calls us by our sin. Jesus knows our sin but calls us by our name. And I try to live in a way now where I don't call anybody by their sin. And I don't call anybody by their mistakes. I'm living the kind of life, and I've learned a lot through anime. That could be a whole nother share because I have a whole journal of stuff. But a statement that was said that without pain, there is no growth, and no death is ever wasted. And I've seen that because there's no resurrection without death in our own lives, even. And another statement of, I no longer have any enemies. I really do try to view the world that way, where I don't have enemies. this. There are people I disagree with. There are people where we have issues. There are folks who may do this, that, or the other, but I refuse to narrow their existence down to being an enemy. And that's something else that I've got from AA. And what I would like to end this share with is something that I discovered about myself in this program. One is I'm actually a pretty decent artist. I've got my drawings up in my office. I've started doing gourmet cooking, which is a cool thing. I never knew I was creative. And the most creative thing that's come out of this, and as part of my healing process, is I started writing slam poetry, all related to my recovery process, to AA, to the steps, to other things like that. I've got about 75 poems now. And it started with the 9:30 spiritual meeting for Spirit of the Universe, where you have readings. So what I am going to end my share with is actually reading you one of the poems that I wrote. And let me minimize this. Okay. This particular poem is called Told Myself. And this was about learning who I really am. I always knew it was important to my own self be true, but I felt myself of little worth, a failure, someone with little intrinsic value to offer to the world. And given all the mistakes made and damage accrued, I suspected my real me was lost forever, wrong paths taken, a journey gone askew. Even if that was the case, I couldn't accept that. I needed more, so I decided to pursue and to search for my real name, my divinely given personhood, present when I made my Earth's debut. Before the hurt and trauma derailed and confused me, before from his arms I withdrew. And if I ever figure it out, I'm gonna live it out and I'm gonna ink that truth on my heart like a tattoo. But where do I start? Who do I speak to? And how do I extricate myself from this hellish milieu? Well, fear was ever present, an unwanted guest, and here is who I was to him. Nothing more than a weakling, someone he could get to jump whenever hope seemed dim, someone who could not embrace possibilities, but would only see what was dark and grim, someone who could only get to do his bidding with only a nudge or a tip of his brim. It was only what fear saw me as. It's clear the chances of achieving my purpose would always be slim. I knew I had to be more than just a being who could be controlled by panic and a whim. And I knew that somewhere deep in my heart, there was a song of guidance that inspired him. And I knew that there's a real life out there. I need not live forever in this diabolical sim. And while I still don't know myself, I know embracing his rantings will only provide me with an unworthy pseudonym. Well, trauma. My long and deeply connected friend said he had some wisdom to share. He said I was nothing more than a package that had been damaged and that I was well past repair. He jokingly told me I was the prince of desperation and that the deep-seated hurt would be my only heir and that the only roads I will ever travel will be the twin forks of catastrophe and despair. If I was only what trauma saw me as, my past, present, and future were all roads to nowhere. So I looked him dead in the eye and called him a liar. I will listen to you no more, I declared. My past is the stuff of nightmares, but I can't accept I'm hopeless and in permanent disrepair. I am more than a house of horrors with a yard sign warning, stay away, beware. So I'm gonna hit those knees again, gonna try to live again, and going to get deep into prayer. Well, addiction. My dependable and destructive companion had choice words, vicious and severe. He held my mind and heart and my will hostage and wanted to make it absolutely clear that I was his property, a disaster unworthy of love and would allow no one to come near, said I was only a doormat who would never know peace, and that pain would be my life's only souvenir. If I was only what addiction saw me as, my existence would be melancholy and austere. So out of the desperation, I started running, looking for something to hold, something to which I could adhere, and I saw a light, dim and faint at first, but brighter as it got closer, as my father did appear. And for the first time in a long time, for the first time in my lifetime, I felt a warmness true and sincere. I entered a divine presence in my helplessness, and then my hopelessness both began to disappear. Well, my holy pops had stepped on the scene, and immediately he put those jackwagons straight in their place. With a righteous and unflinching anger and violent shove, their influence he did displace. With a loving look and gentle words, their years of lies he did replace. With his strong arms and calming hands, he did grab me into a soothing embrace. And then he told me to look him in his eyes, and there I would see myself reflected upon his face. And then he reminded me that he's my father. I had inherited all of his traits. And then he took my heart and soul, and into himself he brought them, and he did interlace my will into his and assured me I was forgiven. the result of his infinite grace. And he told me, live strong and live free and see what my healed heart was made to create. Well, through a submitted will, clear mind, and conscious contact with my beloved higher power, I find that I have strength through him. He is my fortress and my watchtower. I understand that even should I misstep, there is never an angry stare nor a glower. I understand that undying and unshakable love, that is his superpower. I understand that regardless of the situation, he is always available to come in and overpower. I know who I am, and no longer am I left to search and to scour. I know who I am, and no longer must I be timid, and I am never to cower. I know that fear and doubt no longer control my soul, my spirit, they cannot devour, and that I have the capacity to live free regardless of the day, the minute, or the hour. And with that, I will end my share. Thank you for having me. I am glad I could be of service.